This is By Design from the Fast Company Podcast Network. I'm Liz Stinson.
And I'm Mark Wilson.
Today, we're going to talk to the woman behind the design of one of this summer's biggest movies.
You'd let me interview you as Superman.
Sure.
But first, the latest news from the world of design. All right, first, Liz, something that's really on the top of my mind, which is 2025 the vibeless summer?
Mark, I don't know if there's no vibe or if I just am not in on the vibe.
The most unsettling sort of realization. Yeah, there's totally a vibe, but there's a party going on you weren't invited to.
I think that that's a distinct possibility, but I think it's objectively true that this summer has lacked some sort of shared cultural moment. And I don't exactly know how to explain it, but it's a feeling.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I do wonder, are our eyes just like blown out with sunspots from Brat Summer? And so we're like, our expectations for a sort of brand of summer have become a little bit over the top. Or is it really that this is just, a kind of depressing ice summer?
Well, I do think it's a little bit of both. Brat was such an anomaly and such a pervasive cultural moment that anything is going to pale in comparison to it. But I also think that politics, current events is just sucking all of the air out of the room. And it's very hard to gin up any sort of energy around a summer vibe when the news is what it is right now.
I also feel like it's somewhat tied to this idea of is there a song of the summer, right? Like Lord's album was great. Bieber's album is great. Clips's album is great. Tyler, the Creator's new album is great. I don't know that any of those have sort of given us that shared cultural moment. And I do feel like the aesthetic tends to be a little bit born from that sonic environment. And so, yeah, maybe there's no vibe.
Yeah, I mean, you see this in other areas of culture right now, too. I mean, it's happening in film. Most of the top grossing movies this summer are remakes, sequels that we maybe didn't need, or IP grabs, Lilo and Stitch, if you are on, the kiddie track like I am, How to Train Your Dragon. There's Mission Impossible, another Jurassic Park film, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Final Destination, which I cannot watch because the premise absolutely terrifies me, but my friends are actually obsessed with Final Destination. So maybe actually that is something. Maybe that's the vibe of the summer, Final Destination.
The idea that death is coming for all of us is just something you can't contemplate, you're saying.
Right. Yes. It's not something that I'm willing to grapple with at this point in time.
Yeah, the human experience is a little too much for me too right now.
Yeah, I think we can just leave it at there's not a vibe this summer. Everyone do your own thing. Enjoy this lull. Maybe we'll get lucky next year.
Catch Lilo and Stitch.
Catch Lilo and Stitch. So I want to move on to something that almost certainly has a vibe, though we're not sure it's a good one.
Yeah, Mark Zuckerberg recently announced Meta's ambitions for creating AI superintelligence. And, he's trying to build this dream team to do so, spending hundreds of millions of dollars on individual AI researchers and just sort of unprecedented industry spending. Meta actually said they'll spend between $60 and $65 billion on AI this year alone.
We have a very strong infrastructure team that is doing novel work to build up multiple multi-gigawatt data centers.
But to build that structure, he is using apocalyptic, hurricane-proof tents.
And we have people working around the clock on our first two Titan clusters that are going to be greater than a gigawatt.
The first data center where Meta is building these tents is called Prometheus in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio. There's another called Hyperion that will be even bigger that's going up in Louisiana, although Meta didn't confirm that it's actually using tents there.
Yeah, so these data centers are huge. Zuckerberg is bragging that their square footage would cover the island of Manhattan, though we did do some calculations and that seems like a bit of an exaggeration. But in order to get the scale that they're looking for, they're not building normal buildings. They're using these tents, which the company is calling rapid deployment structures.
These are big structures that are basically metal frames with plasticky fabrics protecting them, right?
Weatherproof.
Weatherproof.
Supposedly.
Yeah, weatherproof. And look, I get it. Weatherproof equipment's incredible right now. They do survive a hurricane, but these are not permanent structures. And I think that's really what criticism right now comes down to.
Well, I'm curious, why do they need to use tens? I mean, is it that they're going so fast to build this infrastructure that they can't spare the time to build actual buildings?
I mean, I think that's part of the argument. Nate Berg, our architecture writer, reported on this, and it was admittedly unclear to him whether these were considered stopgap measures to rapidly deploy, or if they will be sort of presented as a quick deployment that's just there permanently, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an outstanding question. But other companies are approaching this differently, right? Nate has also reported on the big boom in data center architecture. I mean, this is actually a huge payday for a lot of architecture firms who are specializing in this area. And some of them are doing really interesting things, right, with the architecture of data centers. They're integrating them into cities on smaller scales. They're building out the area surrounding these data centers to sort of like make it more environmentally friendly. Some of them actually look aesthetically interesting, but Meta is taking the opposite approach. And again, like I don't know if this is just a temporary thing, or maybe they're going to find that these actually work really well and they're cheap and they're fast and it solves a lot of problems for them. But whatever the answer is, these are going to become part of our built environment. And that to me is a little bit depressing.
I mean, I do think that conclusion is quite depressing. We do have some precedent here too. Tesla started using very similar weatherproof tents to produce, I think, Model 3s a few years ago. Those are, from some reports, like still within use at Tesla. And you can look at their issues with quality control, let alone that sort of greater architectural idea that data centers are sort of the most incredible undertaking by humanity through a certain sense. And we are wrapping them in the most sort of like depressing, limited, poorly thought out wrapper.
The architecture of big tech is ostentatious, generally speaking. Facebook's Menlo Park headquarters was designed by Frank Gehry. Apple's Apple Park is by Norman Foster. Apple also is building up this beautiful space in London. I mean, they are not sparing any money when it comes to the places where their people work. And then on the other side, the biggest investment these companies are making right now is in AI, and they're not giving any thought to these structures that, in theory, should be powering this new technology for years and decades to come.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing tons of patents here, right? You have patents for data centers in space. Microsoft looked at putting them underwater. Clearly, the industry's sort of been figuring out where to stick these things for quite a while. But for now, it looks like it's intense around major cities. And I think what it demonstrates is that for now, the architecture of the 21st century will be like built for no one. It's just for these dead machines that aren't really operated much by humans, produced with very little care, like massive Amazon fulfillment centers.
Wow, that is that is a vision that I really don't want to think about, Mark, but thank you for outlining it in that way.
But, on the plus side, like maybe this is all just stalling time because there's going to be a major breakthrough in how these servers are operated within the next few years that'll make them greener, more energy efficient, and they will be placed in beautiful buildings that enhance our built environment.
One can hope.
Well, it's the hot AI summer, Mark, and you're at the center of it.
Okay, so before we move on to our main segment today, we have to mention the biggest branding story of the summer. It's the branding of Zohran Mamdani, the progressive candidate in the New York City mayoral race, who just beat Andrew Cuomo in the primary.
My name is Zohran Mamdani. I'm going to be running for mayor next year.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
And I'm going to be running on that platform. Thank
I'm
you.
going to vote for you. Your energy is...
Thank you. My energy's getting up to inflation.
Mark, I know you're not in New York City, but trust me when I say that Mamdani's branding was, and really still is, everywhere. It's really hard to miss because it's so bright, it's so visible. The posters had this really vibrant palette of MetroCard yellow, a deep blue, bright red. His logo, which is his name, had this really lovely hand-drawn lettering with a dramatic drop shadow. It was meant to look distinct from Cuomo's branding, which was just your standard red, white, and blue political design. And if the goal was to get people's attention, it absolutely worked.
I mean, as an outsider, I could not avoid it myself, so I can only imagine what you were inundated with in New York City. The campaign obviously took everyone by surprise. But I can't help but wonder, visually, why did it? Because there's so much similar to the recent past here. He uses that blue to purple sort of color, red, yellow. These are the same color combinations we saw in AOC's 2018 run. Purple was a foundational color alongside red for Kamala Harris for the People's Campaign in 2020. It's a somewhat tried and true approach now, and it's been notably used by underdog candidates who are trying to avoid that like blue or red, like what's the combination of the two? It's purple. And in these cases, like these are people who are coming in sort of outside the system. These are people of color breaking into politics, and they're using super high contrast appealing branding that does feel like it's catching fire.
Right. I mean, it doesn't surprise me because there is sort of a playbook when it comes to quote unquote like outsider candidates. The branding for Mamdani was done by the Philadelphia design studio Forge, but Tyler Evans, who designed Mamdani's poster that we see absolutely everywhere, also worked on Bernie Sanders' campaign. He just joined Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez's team as creative director. So he has a notable progressive politics track record, and it stands to reason that that playbook would go from one candidate to the next, and it seems to be working.
Yeah, no, absolutely seems to be working.
Yeah, but I want to just add that it wasn't just the poster and the branding. The entire campaign was sort of designed to feel open, optimistic, inviting. Mamdani's team has gotten a lot of attention for its video strategy, which showed Mamdani as a sort of everyman traversing the city. The videos had this really conversational style. And it also helps that he, as a candidate, just has this natural on-camera charisma.
He does. I actually think that the videos are sort of more groundbreaking than the rest of the branding campaign. He feels like he will have a second life as a host somewhere. But it's interesting because, Andrew Cuomo has sort of responded with a similar-ish approach to videos.
It's so painful to watch.
Hello, I'm Andrew Cuomo. And unless you've been living under a rock, you probably know that the Democratic primary did not go the way I had hoped.
It's like he saw somebody younger walk by with like a different pair of jeans, and then he like yelled to an assistant, like, "You're going to buy me those jeans right now, and I'm going to wear them."
And the assistant's like, "But the jeans don't fit."
All right, they're on now, though. But what Cuomo's lacks, I think, is so interesting because Mamdani is, like, these videos are staged, right? Like they are obviously scripted. But he's walking through bodegas talking about them, and he has a mouthful of egg and cheese, like talking with his mouthful, or he was just like literally standing with a pine tree needles like in his face on the street. And so it's so self-aware, like this planned imperfection of it, that I feel like he feels post-internet in a way, right? And I don't think Cuomo can do that.
Right. I mean, it's just not in his wheelhouse. But what's really interesting about the Mamdani branding is how much it has stirred up the opposition. I don't know if you saw this, but across the internet, people are co-opting his branding. People on the right are co-opting his branding, which in my opinion is the ultimate compliment. There was an tweet, do we say tweet, post, an X post recently, an X by Y Combinator president and CEO Gary Tan. He tweeted a picture of himself wearing a sweatshirt that read, "We should have more billionaires." And it had the Mamdani lettering design. And then Olivia Reingold, a writer for Barry Weiss's Free Press, shared a shirt of her own, and it read, "Hot Girls for Capitalism." Because there was a shirt that a lot of people were wearing around New York that said "Hot Girls for Zoran," I believe. And so that was just like a direct co-opt of that shirt. Hey, I'm sure there are lots of hot girls for capitalism. I'm glad they now have a shirt.
It's Hot Girls for Capitalism Summer. I think we found our answer. Thank you.
Finally, we found the vibe. Okay, that's the news. We'll be right back with Beth Mickle, the production designer for Superman. Mark, I was really excited to see Superman. I sort of had to twist the arm of my partner to come with me, but I personally was stoked to see it. And I'm not even like a big superhero comic movie person,
I am so calling you out for BS on that.
Go on.
How many Superman shows have you watched in the past, Liz?
Okay. Superman is definitely the exception for me. There were 2 Superman shows that were quite formative in my teenage life. The first one was, I don't think this was teenage, this was earlier. The Superman with Terry Hatcher, but really the one that I loved the most was Smallville. And for a girl growing up in Nebraska, Superman landing in a cornfield and then just like becoming this hunk at your high school is kind of like the kind of like the dream, right? I mean, I could really see myself in that TV show. So maybe we can thank Lois Lane for my career, for my job. But we can get into all of that when we talk to Beth Mickle. She is on the show today. She is the production designer behind Superman, which just hit theaters earlier in July and already has brought in over $400 million globally at the box office. This is a big hit. And I'm really excited to talk to Beth because I've always thought of production designers as the unsung heroes of movie making.
It's the best job in movie making, right? They create the whole world.
Truly the most creative job I think like period. It's one of the most creative jobs out there.
Yeah. And every production designer I've ever talked to has been a great conversation. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. So let's get to our conversation with Beth. Beth, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the invite.
So we're just going to jump right into it. Superman has been done to death. I think there are 11 movies that have come out since 1978. And so, I imagine that it's hard to do something new. And yet this film actually feels really distinct from a visual perspective. Just to start, we'd love to hear about what you wanted to do with this movie. What was your new thesis on Superman that inspired the visual world?
Yeah, we really wanted to make a movie that felt like just a comic book had come to life on screen. That was really James's big direction. All-Star Superman, Frank Quitely's beautiful series from the early 2000s, that was our guiding light for everything. And so I started with looking through that. I read the entire series in about 3 days and just really absorbed the material. And it's absolutely stunning, and it's bright and vivid and energetic and graphic and colorful. And it has a little bit of almost like a little bit of an old school comic book style to the illustration. So that was a really nice leading point for us.
A friend said to me that this Superman was great because he's sincere. It kind of fills your heart to watch the film in a lot of moments, as troubling as some scenes are. But part of that sincerity to me comes to that comic book aesthetic, that sort of softer, classic comic book aesthetic that you went with. But, I saw early on that, in the early trailers, the colors were much different, right? Like the early trailer has sort of this cold Zack Snyder almost inspired world. And then we see sort of this magical snap that was done in the trailers and the film. And all of a sudden it's these bright colors, very much like the comic you referenced. Was that always the plan, or was that a decision made later?
Part of it was we were really rushing to get a trailer out early just so everybody could get a little taste. And so I think the sets that had the most vibrancy and the most color were a lot of the stage builds, a lot of the things that were going to need more color grading afterwards, or some of the worlds that need the visual effects enhancement afterwards. And so I think those shots just weren't quite ready, I think, at that stage. That's what I think. I wasn't too much a part of the process with putting those together, but from watching it, I could see, okay, this is a lot of the daytime exteriors that we did in Metropolis, which just weren't going to be quite as poppy as what the actual stage builds were going to become. And the fortress, I think we wanted to wait to reveal that a little bit. And so, I think it was all just in a matter of just getting stuff out to the audience so they could get a little taste. But it is funny you say that, because I remember reading some of those reviews of the trailer and thinking, I think there's a lot coming that's going to make people happy, just if we just give it a little bit more time in the oven.
What's really interesting to me is what Mark was just talking about with the colors. I mean, you say you want to bring a comic book to life. And I remember reading somewhere that back in the day when comic books were really big, printing presses were only able to do so much in terms of colors, right? They didn't have the array of colors that maybe a digital printing press might have today. And so that lent itself to a certain palette or aesthetic. And I really agree that this film feels like a comic book brought to life. And when it comes to the colors, what exactly do these bright, primary, poppier colors evoke for you? What are they supposed to communicate to the audience?
I think life, honestly, like in the simplest form, there's a lot of optimism. There's a lot of spirit, a lot of heart. So I think that's what comes when you're kind of showered with bright, vivid colors, a lot of good sunlight, a lot of good clarity. I think it ends up ultimately leading to something that feels like a more upbeat experience, something that feels more joyful, more entertaining, more, a little more energy. So I think James was really looking to kind of lighten the mood and lift the spirits and fill us with optimism. And so I think bright color is kind of the first and quickest and simplest way to just show that right out of the gate. So, and when you look at the All-Star Superman, it is actually the first thing I did was I took screenshots of, I think it was about 75 pages of the series, just so I could get kind of a snapshot of the palette. And then I put them all together. I didn't even kind of arrange them. I just put them all together so I could just take a look and squint and see what were the leading colors here. It was largely primary. It was largely Superman's colors. It was red backdrops and blue backdrops and a bright big gold page, entirely just gold filled with light. And then it was the secondary colors. A little bit of that was secondary colors, kind of the greens and the purples and the oranges. But there really wasn't, there was hardly any of the, those tertiary tones that are the kind of magentas and the aquas. And so it was really pretty quickly, you could see like, oh, we're almost kind of dealing with a rainbow palette here. And then the other thing that we saw a lot in that too is just these like big, fun geometric shapes. It was a lot of geometry, a lot of big, fun, simple graphic shapes, a big sphere, a big, big triangle on the street, big race stripes down the street with yellow traffic lines. And so all that kind of graphic nature too, I think just all kind of led to this poppier, more vibrant visual.
I just want to say I love the blue on Superman's costume. And I can't quite articulate what the blue is. So could you just tell me what is that blue that I'm looking at? It's almost like vintage and icy.
She's looking to
I'm looking to paint my room. The Superman blue.
Yeah. It almost has kind of like an aquamarine undertone to it. It's not just true royal blue, and it definitely doesn't veer kind of in the purple or blue. So it almost has like a little bit of an aquamarine undertone to it. And that was quite the exploration. Judiana Makovsky, just an absolute legend in the costume world. She really did her research on tones as well. And when she pulled out the version, ended up being, I just remember at the meeting, everybody unanimously said, and James as well, like, okay, yeah, this is it. We're hitting it. And then, of course, the trunks, no trunks was an ongoing discussion. And then just as we started to know we wanted to harken back more to the 70s, to the original version, it felt like, oh, of course you got to do the trunks, and it also just kind of helps to hit that tone on the head, I think, that we were going for.
I mean, that harkening back to the original film too. I mean, it starts right with the credits, right? Where you have like this almost like this, 19, I guess, was it 78? Like 78 to 80s, inspired credit sequence that feels just like pure homage to kick things off.
Yeah, absolutely. Even all the way down to the fonts that we chose for everything. It's none of it feels like a font that's going to be identified as 2023, 2025. Everything has a kind of a timeless quality to it. In all the decisions that kind of went across the board, timelessness was a really big term. We use that a lot, sense of nostalgia. We made sure that we at least tried to do that with the Fortress of Solitude. We didn't want to fully reinvent the wheel, and everybody remembers Superman going out in 1978, throwing the crystal, and that beautiful fortress emerging. So we wanted to do something similar to that, but people have just tried lots of different aesthetics with it, and I think we just felt like there was so much in the original that really related to us. It had kind of the uplifting humor. It had just the sweet relationships, and it had a lot of heart to it. And so it just felt like, okay, if we kind of follow their footsteps a little bit, we'd probably be going in the right direction. So
obviously the way that films get made it's changed a lot since 1978.
Yes.
But what hasn't changed is that you all seem to really lean into practical effects. I was pretty shocked to learn that the Fortress of Solitude was not CGI. Your Your team actually built the the Fortress of
Yes.
Solitude with giant ice crystals. Can you tell us about that process? Because that's really crazy to me. The person who I was watching this movie with, I was like, that's definitely CGI, and I was wrong.
Yes, thank you so much. I will say this. I cry every single time that fortress emerges from the snow. I cry every single time we go through the doors and we go inside. I'm incredibly, incredibly honored that I had the opportunity to get to reimagine and recreate such an iconic piece of filmography. I remember telling James, hey, materials have really evolved since then. I think we're going to be able to do some really great things with resins and give us a shot, let us go and have a play. And I think we can really bring this to life. Then what proceeded was about 12 weeks of testing with resins where we actually couldn't nail the crystal and how to do a crystal. And so it's kind of led to...
Was it like too dull or what? Like, how was the crystal off?
We just couldn't get... we were drawing these crystals that were 30 and 40 feet long. That's what we were drawing for our construction drawings. And we were trying to do a prototype of a crystal just 6 or 8 feet just to see if it was working. And in order for them to be strong enough and have enough integrity to actually stand and not break, they would end up too solid and cloudy, too heavy, no translucency. So the strong ones just were basically solid. And then if we made them thin enough to get, really good translucency, they would break and they were brittle and they'd crumble. So it took a lot of R&D and a lot of playing with resins to figure out the system of how to do it. And ultimately, kind of toward the very end, with about 8 weeks to go, 6 or 8 weeks to go, we finally did nail it with, we ended up sculpting crystals out of foam and then making a mold out of those, casting those, making a mold out of those. And then we would pour 2 halves. So we'd have 2 halves of crystals. And then we join the 2 halves of crystals, but we would actually seam them from the inside. So you would have one of the construction, gentlemen going in there and crawling inside of a 4-foot diameter crystal and sealing it from the inside, sealing the halves together. And then we'd string our fiberglass through them and try to create some of those occlusions. And then you would end up with a freestanding crystal, which was, it was a lot of testing, but we finally did nail it with about 8 weeks to go. Then it became, okay, we have 242 of these in our drawings. How many can we make a day in order to hit our numbers? And so we had to do the math, and we ended up having a night crew and a day crew going around the clock, creating these crystals. These flatbed trucks would roll in from our crystal warehouse down the street and offload another 10 or 12 crystals that were made that morning. We'd put them into place. And yeah, we were really happy. So that's the kind of fun stuff that is doable now, but wouldn't have been doable, decades ago. But yeah, I was really proud when everybody walked onto the set and saw that, oh no, this is actually, we're surrounded by crystals here.
It does seem like it is a lot more work potentially than doing something on a computer. But what do you gain? I mean, why go through all of that to build the Fortress of Solitude out of resin crystals?
So while our VFX team, they are absolutely 100% the best in the industry, there are just moments that you end up feeling like you might be in an animated world more than a tactile world. And I, for one, I really believe, and I know James really believes, that as soon as something feels like it's not a tactile world, and as soon as it feels like you're in more of an animated world, you lose the audience, or you at least lose a portion of the audience. They become divested in the story. They aren't quite along for the ride the way that they were before. So you get that. You get everybody coming along for the ride in the audience. But then also, I really feel like for the actors and for the filmmakers, when you're actually standing in a real tangible world, it helps everybody buy into that story, right? It helps the actors feel like, oh yeah, no, I'm not just in a soundstage surrounded by green fabric or blue fabric that's all going to be replaced. And I'm not talking to like a tennis ball, I'm actually talking to a real robot. And so I do think on some level, it definitely helps the performances. It just helps everybody there on the set that day get into the mood. And I really feel like that comes across.
I would just say I think it's fascinating because you kind of have, in the last few years, maybe even about the last decade, we've really seen this widespread return to practical sets, like on a lot of different productions. And at the same time, you have sort of Netflix releasing its first AI generated, environments and things like that happening at once.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, like, how are you and how, I guess, are your peers like navigating these two, I think, very opposite poles at the same time?
I think you can look at AI as this. You could look at it as the adversary, the thing that's going to put everybody out of work. Or you could also look at it as a tool. And I've definitely chosen to think of it as it can be a creative development tool just to help us get farther and help just spitballing ideas. And I do think it'll be a tool for, studios who get a great script from an unknown director, but that script's going to cost $100 million to make as it is on the page. But hey, if we use AI for these 5 sequences of a huge international battle that happens in some foreign territory, I think that what it will ultimately end up doing is making those films more possible to do. Still do a lot of it practically, just the way we've always been doing. But I think it's just going to ultimately end up opening more doors. But my brother's a filmmaker, Jim Mickle, really talented. And he and I talk about it a lot. And he had a great observation as well. He's like, I think ultimately people are always going to want to return to what's original, what's handcrafted. A lot of the stuff, even when you go on Pinterest now, you see all the AI generated stuff. It kind of just becomes a monotonous mush of kind of indecipherableness. And
it's very much like, to draw a parallel in Superman, like in sci-fi, like the black goo aesthetic. Like, how do you counter the sort of, like the black goo aesthetic coming for you?
Yes, no, exactly. And I think you look at it and I think you could see, at least I believe that pretty quickly, and I think you're already seeing it, that people are kind of tired of the same AI generated type of imagery and are just going to want to see, again, more original stuff coming from humans and original creators and original filmmakers, original artists. I think we can't deny that the world's going to look wildly different 5 years from now. And I think it's important to be adaptable. It's, the advice I give everybody, be adaptable. And it's going to be fascinating. We should have a talk. We should schedule a talk for 5 years. See what we're all saying.
Exactly.
One thing that AI doesn't seem capable of is all of the little details that go into a film that actually make it feel like a world, right? Like, I think the work of a production designer is to bring those little details to life. And one of the things about the Superman film that I really loved observing are the personal spaces of all of the characters. So Lois Lane's apartment, also Superman's apartment, which I am very curious to hear about. How do you think about those spaces and how do you bring them to life? How do they relate to the characters?
For Lois's, that was just the biggest joy to do as far as a residential interior. Talk about a character that has a lot of depth and a lot of layers. And Rachel Brosnahan is what a phenomenal actor, but then also an actor who really thinks about her space and her environment. And she came in with a lot of ideas as well and just said it was, important that the space felt lived in a way where it was clear that her work was her priority. Her work was her entire focus. And James also wanted it to feel like there was a lot of professorial clutter. He kept saying, like, it's clear that she just comes in and there's her research is everywhere. Her books are everywhere.
That's a great way to phrase it. Professorial clutter. I didn't have a description for it, but that's what it is.
I feel so much better about my home with that. I just need a rebrand.
You just need to rebrand. As soon as you put that little adjective professorial, it suddenly becomes sophisticated and forgivable. You're like, okay, yes, acceptable. So then Rachel had all these great notes. Like, my character doesn't have time to go out and find a million, different notebooks. She finds the one notebook that works for her. She buys it in bulk and she uses that notebook over and over. So it's like the stacks of the same notebook are in the apartment. She likes one pen. She likes one, this ball pen, 0.05, or line weight. So we got all of those pens in. That's what's in all of the cup holders. She folds her laundry, but doesn't have time to put her laundry away. She's tidy enough to fold it, but doesn't actually put it away. She's tidy enough to maybe wash the dishes and put them in the drying rack, but she doesn't put them away. And so all those little things, I think, really lead up to an environment that at least I can really identify with. You can really see oh, yeah, that stuff that you kind of always mean to get to, but your work is kind of what you live for and what you kind of end up turning your energy and your focus to.
I have this question about that space, and I really want to get to Superman space in a second. But when David Cornsweet's standing in that kitchen and he's cooking, is the kitchen intentionally made a little bit smaller to make him look big, or is he just that big of a dude?
Great question. Great question. It's a little bit of both. He's definitely just that big of a dude, but it's also James really wanted it to feel like a pre-war apartment in New York. You know, that anybody that lived there in the 90s and was an artist or, you know, along those lines had some pre-war apartment in Chelsea or the high Upper West Side. And those apartments, I lived in one on 99th Street in Riverside Drive with one of my best girlfriends. Our kitchen was, believe it or not, even smaller than that kitchen. And it was, you couldn't fit two people in it at once. It didn't even have the open wall to the living room. It was just like one little doorway and one little person could squeeze in. And if you turn one side, you hit the fridge. If you turn the other, you hit the oven. So we were really trying to model it after those kinds of apartments in New York.
But she gets such a big living room comparatively, I would just say. It's like a palatial, like 700 square foot living room and the 20 square foot kitchen.
The tiny little kitchen.
But that's how New York apartments are. I mean, you never get 700 square feet in the living room, but, you know.
But you might get like 300, you know. And then if you actually look around, like her corkboard, there are so many Easter eggs in there. I don't think we actually have any shots that maybe show that text clearly enough. So I won't go into what all the Easter eggs are, but if there are any sleuths out there and want to zoom in on that corkboard, there are so many DC Easter eggs hidden in there and references to other enterprises that are part of the DC world. Somebody already picked up, I think, our Stag Enterprises article that's on the bookshelf. And then an article about Superman is on the mantle that actually comes right from the DC lore. Lois Lane won a Pulitzer Prize for an article about Superman. So we made a little article about Superman, and her little framed Pulitzer Prize is there.
Contrasted to Superman's apartment, though, just real quickly.
Yeah.
I felt like it's like looked straight out of Dubai or something. Like it was like
one chair, one lamp.
Yep. All on purpose.
I did appreciate the blue cabinetry. A little like callback to the costume.
Thank you. That was purposeful. Thank you. We even tried to kind of get it, you know, to really kind of be right in line with what his blue toad was. That one was really fun. The idea was that Superman probably just went into an apartment and looked at the model apartment that they were that they were just renting. Like, here's a model apartment. And he just said, great, like, I'm just going to take this model staged apartment the way a realtor set it up, because Superman wouldn't really have a sense of how to decorate his space and what to bring in and where to even go shop for these things. It's just not on his radar. So James just said it should feel like a realtor staged the apartment, and he just took it as is. And there were actually some really funny discussions where I was like, shouldn't we have a couple chairs? Maybe we want to have a couch in case he has guests. He's like, he's Superman. He's not like throwing parties, you know? And I was like, fair enough.
he can stand 24 hours straight. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. He comes home. He has his one chair for him. He has his TV. The one thing James had us put in there, which you actually don't see because of the lighting, because we wanted it to be dark and be all about the outside imp fight, was that James said he would maybe have a set of hand weights. And because he wants to try to like fool people as to why he's so big and burly. So he probably has a set of hand weights.
How heavy are they?
Well, so that was the funny thing James said, but they're just like 2 and 5 pound weights. Like, he doesn't understand. He's probably curling a lot more than 5 pounds. So we had like the daintiest little set of like girls' hand weights down on the side of the console.
That's hilarious. I did not notice that.
He needs hypno hand weights. That's what he needs.
He needs hypno hand weights. So that was actually really fun to do. And we kept it really devoid of personal stuff. He also, of course, doesn't want to reveal anything about his family. That's all. He's trying to keep them safe. So he's not revealing Ma and Pa. And so it's just supposed to feel purposely very sterile and very staged. And then the last thing I'll say design-wise, which was fun on that, is that we knew there was going to be this big imp fight outside that was going to it was going to feel like fireworks. That was the idea. Like, visually, it should feel like fireworks, but it's this alien imp fight happening outside that he's not participating in. And we knew there were going to be all this big array of colors, you know, shining outside. And so I thought, okay, let's make sure the walls, the ceiling, the floor are all really glossy so that all of that color that's outside really carries inside. We did the imp on an LED screen outside. So that's actually real. It's on an LED screen outside of his windows. We designed all of that early on. And then it's actually like all the reflections along the walls, that's all real and in camera. It's all like...
Yeah, I was going to say, that's why the light looks so good in that scene, because it's actual light.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that I love Superman from a personal perspective is because it's about journalists, right? And it's fun to watch a journalist on screen. But I do have to ask, Beth, have you ever been in a newsroom? Because the Daily Planet does not look like any that I have been in.
It might be more fantastical than the Fortress of Solitude. Like if I saw both side by side in 2025, I think the Daily Planet is less realistic.
Well, a lot of that goes to actually what we were trying to do with the period stuff as well. We looked at a lot of 1960s, 1970s, 1980s newsrooms where, you know, it is stacks of papers. It's landline telephones. That was very purposeful. We didn't want it to be, you know, we didn't want it to feel like a fully digitally taken over news space. So all those things that can kind of help keep a little foot in a little bit of a nostalgia. So you'll see like all the desk lamps, they're all vintage desk lamps that we painted to make it look like they were all factory ordered and put into the space. The computer monitors are nowhere near the new swanky computer monitors we have now. So, and the chairs, if you look at the chairs, those are like 1970s desk chairs that we reupholstered just to give it a little bit of that timeless thread. And then did all of the modern, James just said it, then they have the media all around them. So like the news is always playing. So we just had monitors everywhere.
So it's like the digital components are contemporary essentially, or like
Exactly.
the screen media components, and everything else is sort of floating in time.
Exactly. I wish I could have actually had exactly your wording for when I was trying to explain this to people throughout prep, because that's exactly it. Like, you know, we know very modern news offices have a very different feel from what we were going for, but we just felt like we wanted it to have a classic. We wanted it to have this classic feel, Woodward and Bernstein feel, and looking at journalists who were breaking news back in the 70s and 80s and what do those spaces look like. And so like there's Post-its everywhere, you know, stacks of paper everywhere. And that's obviously not the way people operate this day and age. But when you look at it, you're like, well, that's the way the world operated for 50 years. So it feels a little more nostalgic than, you know, I'm sure news studios today in 2025 are going to look wildly different in 2030. So the digital age, I think, is going to just evolve every decade. It's going to look like a different world. Whereas I think that like the paper and pen age that's what we all knew for a century. Actually, the same, just as like another example of that, like the picture cars. We were trying to figure out what the taxis and the police cars would be. And like now they're all modern Chargers and they're all slick and they're compact. But for the longest time, if you lived in any city from like the 80s to the 90s to the early 2000s to 2010, really, it was that classic Crown Vic. That's what everybody knew. So that was another example of like what feels more timeless. The 2023 Charger that we saw for these 3 years and they upgraded in 2026? Or is it going to be the vehicle that was there in the 80s, also there in 2002, also in 2010? So we're kind of going for what's the thing that's going to feel like it's been the longest lasting in history. So, and then we were really lucky. We shot in the Macon train station, which just had that gorgeous architecture in Georgia. And so we had some really great infrastructure to start with.
Yeah, I mean, the space is really aspirational. I loved looking at it.
Yeah.
I kid. I mean, obviously, if our newsroom looked like that, I would be so happy. I love those details, that timelessness, like how Mark described, just sort of floating in time. We don't really know where we are. And you had said that there are no jeans in the movie because the jeans were considered too modern, which is so funny. I didn't notice it, although I did take note of Lois's pants. I really liked her pants. Very, very Brooklyn mom pants. But yeah, even down to the jeans, like it just, what a fun job you have to be able to think in this way and really build out these worlds.
Yeah, you know, and to create this set of roles, really, you know, like aside from the cell phones where they're getting the information dumps from, you know, about the Lex Luthor files and stuff. And aside from those, like we just didn't want to spend a ton of time looking on cell phone screens and even that, like, what are the cell phones? Like, they're going to be dated in 2 years anyway. So just trying to find things that felt like they could last a little bit at the test of time. And yeah, and Juliana had the no jeans idea. And when you look at the movie, you don't immediately know it when you're looking at a crowd. You just know that, like, wow, this crowd feels a little captured in time. And only when you really start to zero in are you like, oh, there's no like heavy, like logo graphic t-shirts, which we see everywhere, now. And if there is, it's like a vintage DC graphic for like Big Belly Burger or something, and there are no jeans so we try to avoid, even in the general picture cards, again, that you see in the background, like just try to avoid things that felt like this is going to stamp us and like the 2020 decade, let's not do that. So it's all those fun little details that you do just to try to create a little blanket of timelessness. And honestly, we talked about this the second week of prep. Juliana and I actually both had this idea about kind of creating the world this way. And we went to James with this idea. He really loved it. He felt like that was the way to kind of help have this movie just be for a movie for all ages, a movie that'll last the test of time, a movie that kind of feels a little suspended in time. And it was a really fun, big, giant experiment to see if it would work. If you look at all the street signs, there's neons, that feel older. There's old can letters like we used to have in New York back in the 60s and 70s. But then there's also like new printed vinyls. Just do a nice little mix so it all kind of lives together. And it's really great having the movie come out and feel like, all right, it doesn't feel like a period piece, but nobody's ever going to look at this movie and be like, that was made in 2023. So I feel like that's where there was success in it. But it's fun. It's really fun to see it now and see how all the elements came together.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for sharing all of these details with us. I had a great time learning about Superman. Makes me want to watch the movie again.
Yes, thank you for portraying journalists as superheroes.
No, and thank you for all the really thoughtful questions.
There must be a reason for you to be here.
Yes, I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
You're going to end up fighting every elected official in this country.
Okay, we're back with Best and Worst. Still our segment that needs a new name. We're waiting for your suggestions. Please email them to us.
We're talking about the best stuff in design this month and the worst stuff in design this month, but with a better name that you will come up with for us. And to assist us in the judging, as always, is our producer, Cody Nelson. He has complete power over whether Liz or I win best or worst.
Glad to be back. Sound off in the comments with your name ideas for this segment, and we will take them.
Okay, Mark, I want you to go first this time. What is the best design of the month?
The best design of the month is Andy Sachs is back.
Okay, can you please spell Gabbana? Hello?
The lead protagonist of Devil Wears Prada 2, which is now filming. We got to see a first shot of Anne Hathaway wearing a pinstriped vest suit, looking really powerful, or like she has a good budget from Rent the Runway. But look, I'm like hyped for the film. I don't know where it's going. I love Devil Wears Prada 1, another great journalism story. So basically anything that comes out about the movie, I'm going to just stand for.
Yeah, so I can't disagree with that. I think that's a very exciting development in my world too. But I've got one that's going to be divisive. It is Coke reimagining its recipe with cane sugar. So the company recently announced that it will be introducing a new product this fall, which is Coke, but made with cane sugar.
No, you buried the lead on this one, Liz. So
yeah, no,
Coke
I'm getting there.
Reimagining.
Reimagining, redesigning. This is why it qualifies as a best design. No, but this happened because President Trump threw a temper tantrum on Truth Social a couple weeks back, calling for Coke to replace high fructose corn syrup with cane sugar. That's the way it's made in Mexico and in other countries. And it is objectively better, right? Like cane sugar is an export of Mexico. It's pricier in the US. I think that's a big reason why Coke doesn't use it here. So Trump called for Coke to do this. Coke just announced that it is going to be introducing this new product. It's going to be a separate product, right? They're still going to make the Coke with high fructose corn syrup, but this is going to be something else that you can buy. Listen, like, it is admittedly a gross abuse of power to bully a company into making your favorite soda with the recipe you prefer, but it is also just better. And for that reason, it is my best design of the month.
I mean, look, Coca-Cola with real sugar is objectively delicious and so much better than corn syrup. However, your best design of the month is my worst design of the month. I just love this idea of like Trump reimagining Coca-Cola, like Trump reimagined immigration. um,
Well, when you put it that way.
I can't do the MAGA Coke. I just can't do it.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that.
It's like reimagining CBS without Stephen Colbert.
That's so depressing.
Too soon, Cody. Too soon.
He's a rich guy. He'll be fine.
What I do hate about it, like truly, is that it will be a different Coke. That they didn't just update Coke, so all Coke is just this. Like it will be an identifiable Trump Coke, like the MAGA Coke.
And it's probably going to be more expensive.
I mean, they don't have like the high fructose corn subsidies driving it, so it probably will be more expensive. But I don't know. I'm really torn here because yes, like sugar Coke is great. I'm also just like imagining the Share a Coke campaign of a child reaching through the fence to their parents.
You just ruined this for me. You just ruined it with MAGA Coke.
I'm not done yet. Like imagine an ICE agent at the end of a long, hard day sitting down to a plate of tacos. I hate that like a single person doing a mostly bad and wrong things can do something good, but then that's like still terrible.
Yeah. All right.
Sorry, Liz, I went too hard.
Okay.
I went too hard. No. I'll correct. We'll share a Coke. We'll share a Coke. What was your worst design of the month, Liz?
I'm going to go in a different direction here. So my worst is the fashion that came out of the Allen & Co. Sun Valley retreat. A few weeks back in July, many of the world's richest and most powerful business people like Mark Zuckerberg, Sam Altman, Tim Cook, a bunch of other business people, arrived in Sun Valley, Idaho for the annual meeting of the moguls. So media covers this event like it does the red carpet of the Oscars, but what you're getting there is very, very different than what you get at the Oscars.
Understatement.
Yeah, right. It's anti-fashion. I mean, these guys, and most of them are men, really don't give a shit about what they wear. And I just want to see the billionaires embrace it, right? Like, just try a little bit. You don't have to cosplay dad on the weekend. I am a normal person. Like, the only person who I think really brought it, and it was not good, was Sam Altman with his wacky glasses. He had some like really strange sunglasses on.
Statement piece, though. He actually tried with a statement piece.
At least it was something to talk about. And, I'm just going to plug this because we just launched our Best Dressed in Business list yesterday. And there are a lot of business people out there who do care about how they dress. And I think it's additive to their persona, to their work. And, I guess I would just like to see other people try a little bit harder, too.
No, I'm with you on that. Like, I feel like I don't need, gilded lapels. But at the same time, you can dress better than like you just like walked out of a Kohl's.
Yes. Amen to that. All right, Cody. Hard to choose, right?
Hard to choose, isn't it, Cody?
A lot of good, a lot of bad. Be the tiebreaker on Coke.
I don't think the Coke is even a story, because if you are someone who has been to a grocery store, which I would exclude the president from that class of people, you would know that you can get cane sugar Coke. This is a non-issue. I'm going to go for the best. Devil Wears Prada 2. Easy answer. I can't wait. I forgot there was a sequel coming out, and you reminded me, and that made me really happy. I love the first one. I can't wait.
I feel like Cody copping out of best and worst is the worst design decision of this month.
I'm just trying to...
Liz, can you back me up on this? We can have a mutiny.
I have been to a grocery store, Cody.
I know you have.
Despite Where is this cane sugar Coke that you speak of?
They do have cane sugar Coke in grocery stores, but it costs... I paid $2 a bottle recently, which I hate to admit.
Are you talking about the glass bottle Coke?
Yeah, it's like Mexican Coke.
Yeah, Mexican Coke. But this is going to be, I guess, American-made Coke. Not that it really matters. I don't know, like, what the distinction is. But...
Liz wants that made in America Coke.
I have no allegiance to American Coke. I want to set the record straight.
Made in America Coke is such a horrible choice that it doesn't even register as my worst. It's just like, it's sub-list for this week.
The middest of mid.
The middest of mid. I'm a fridge cigarette guy anyway. The worst, I'm going to go with Liz's this week, the Sun Valley fashion. I was scrolling through the Fast Company article that we will put in the show notes so you can see some of these just absolute garbage fits. They're not even fits. They're just like poor fitting polos and like solid color t-shirts.
The polos are the most insulting.
They are. And I assume like whatever company they're buying these from, or their like assistants are buying these from, like these polos probably cost more than most people's entire like outfits on any given day. But like it looks like Old Navy sales rack from like 20 years ago. It's just there's no attempt. And I think if you have that much money, pay a consultant at least. Like you could hire a team of people to dress you and you still come out just looking like ass. No, thank you. Worst design.
All right. I feel vindicated slightly.
There you go, Liz.
All right. We're even. We're even on that one, Liz. I'll take it.
All right. Well, that's all for today's episode.
Our show is produced by Cody Nelson, mix and sound design by Nicholas Torres, and our executive producer is Josh Christensen.
Remember again to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next month.